And we are recording. Okay, hello. Welcome to Parkour Coach Companion. My name is Sam Kopak, and today I'm having a little talk with the Coventry man, Jack Holland-Bartlett. It's weird doing this because we chat all the time, and we've been chatting for years, and this is the only kind of recorded thing we've done, really, I guess you could say.
Long form, we chat more than anyone else that I chat to long form about all sorts of things. So
yeah, exactly. So the point of doing this really is aimed not just to kind of get to know you more, but more look into your perspectives on coaching parkour and your perspectives on how to help people who are trying to do parkour and that sort of thing. So really, we're going to go for about 40 minutes, hopefully, all going well. And my idea centers around two very important questions. The first question is, what are the most important aspects of coaching to help people improve? And oh, you're joking. That's all right. And and then the second question will be, what are the most important aspects of your own training to help you improve? So we're kind of looking at progression, but I guess you could maybe start with just saying a bit about where you coach, who you coach, how long you've been coaching for, all that yada yada. So yeah.
So training in general for parkour is coming up about 10 years. I've been coaching for probably 5 years now, maybe 4 or 5 years. I don't really know exactly when I started, but I started with Jump Parkour. So it's a company that's based in Leicester. I'm still coaching with them. It started off as kind of just like one session a week, and then I built up and did quite a lot. But then other commitments to jobs and other things in life have meant that I've reduced that back down now. So I'm actually only coaching once a week now, but still with the same company, set up in Coventry. So it's a Leicester company, but we've set up through them, through their help and through their kind of assets. We've been able to set up in Coventry. So I coach alongside Chris Scott, who is level 2 coach. I'm a level 1 coach. So yeah, we've been doing that in Coventry for about a year. No, how long is it now? Maybe 2 years. Maybe about 2 years in Coventry. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's my coaching. I know you do a lot more, and a lot of people do a lot more hours than me and do it full time and stuff. It's never been a full time thing for me.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of a thing that I do alongside. It's almost like a second job, secondary employment that I have. So
yeah, cool. So are you mainly focused on teaching kids or adults or students or?
So it's split pretty evenly. The session that I do is like 3 back-to-back sessions. So 7 to 11-year-olds, and then 12 to 15-year-olds, and then adults. So 3 separate classes. So all age ranges, basically from 7 up until, I think our eldest student has been about 40 odd, maybe early 40s, and he's actually been coming since the very start of the classes in Coventry. So yeah, quite a big range. Not quite as young as I think some people tend to start coaching parkour. I'd pretty much agree with Jump's decision on 7 being the minimum age, just because I think class control, it's a bit tricky below that. But
yeah, I agree. I think mine is 8. I definitely, I've done sort of camps before where we've reduced that, and it's tough. It definitely, I feel like it kind of teaching parkour, it kind of disintegrates a bit for me. I think it becomes more like movement games and play and kind of different movement challenges and stuff. And actually, I've done some camps where, to try and attract more kids into my camp, I've just not called it parkour. I've just been like, hey, guys, come and see this. We're going to try and get across this river, on the floor, using like balance beams and stuff,
No, I completely agree. I think that's exactly it. Like when they're just young and don't have the kind of mental capacity to identify it as set challenges and progression. It's just about play, and encouraging that is the best thing you can do at young ages. Obviously, in a class environment where we've got specific setups and we're looking at certain things in a day, then it's not as easy to just go and do things like that. But I think the younger you go, the more your training should be, your coaching should be like that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so when you, I don't know whether you adhere to jump specific kind of formula, or whether you kind of are more individualistic with your approach, but what are the things that you get ready for a session, you've got the kids waiting or whatever, or whoever waiting, and what are the things that go through your head to think like, right, this is important, this is what I need to focus on with what I want to do with a session?
So first of all, I think like keeping track of what you've been coaching over the past month, past 3 months, something like that. Obviously, we tend to rotate around different ideas. We're quite limited on equipment that we have specifically in Coventry, so a lot of the ideas that me and Chris come up with in order to find challenges and design classes and stations is pretty creative. We have to get pretty creative with those things. But I think the idea that's more important than focusing on techniques at a time and coming up with ideas for certain classes to work on specific techniques is more work on principles over time. So rather than just going, okay, we're gonna focus like say 4 weeks on different vaults, and then we're going to focus 4 weeks on precisions, then we're going to focus 4 weeks on cat leaps, or things like that. That's kind of technique based structuring to the coaching. I think the kids, especially younger kids, get way more out of it by working, and all age ranges really, like get more out of it by practicing principles at a time. So one might be focused a little bit more on strength and climbing challenges, oriented challenges, and some might be focused more on quietness of movement. Things like that I think are ways to kind of like it makes the training less regimented, and I think like if you explore an idea, a concept, a principle at a time, you can go in a lot of directions with that at a time. So I think that's something I've in recent past year have tried to do a lot more of. That doesn't mean that we'll have sessions where we'll specifically focus on foot placement and landings and things like that, because I think that's so important. But yeah, that's kind of the principle or the ideas I try and go by.
That's interesting. I think one thing that I've found kind of working and talking with different coaches is that balance between how regimented you make the session in terms of, right, we're going to learn this technique and we're going to do this amount of this and this amount of this, and like you say, more kind of, I guess you could say like open plan, like looking at principles and looking at multi equipment, multi kind of different types of movement in what using different types of equipment based around a principle. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. And so what sort of things do you find that work? Because obviously, you do see, especially with the beginners, you can see like a lot of improvement, especially the ones that really focus. What are the things that you see that kind of think, okay, that works, like that was good?
I think like, ultimately that is the thing we're after, isn't it? As coaches, is to find those things, those kind of patterns and ability as a coach to help the kids to progress. I was actually just filming a video talking about. I just mentioned this in the video, talking about progression and how progression is literally at the core of what parkour is. Without progression, like take that away from parkour, but keep the social side, keep the outdoorsy side of parkour. If progression isn't there, I'm not enjoying it, and I probably wouldn't still be doing it now. So I think no matter what the age of the student, that should always be at the core of what you're after. You're trying to help them to improve, and I think we've talked about this before, and you agree with that. And I think things that do help is ultimately it comes down to finding the right level of challenge for the individual, or for a class. Sometimes you can do more group-based challenges. But yeah, ultimately, I think it comes down to finding the right amount of difficulty within a challenge so that the student isn't put off by it being too difficult and it taking too long for them to get. And because I think when you do that, it can kind of leave the student with a sense of feeling like they're just not good enough, like that it's too hard. And maybe for some kids that maybe like overly difficult approach can work, but for the vast majority, I think it needs to be in the right kind of dosage, you know. So if we look at progressions with precisions, for example, we take precisions as an example, which is quite a predictable example for me to take, but it would be like if a kid's first session ever, if we find that he's jumping to a wall and he's done maybe 10 attempts at doing a small jump between two obstacles that are, you know, like a flat edge, and his foot placement is very, very consistent, we'll then give him a challenge where he's landing on a more precise edge, or we might, rather than the edge being as wide as going on for as long as a foot, we might limit that by putting something in the way. So his foot placement has to be even more accurate. And then you progress up to a rail. And it all depends on the individual's ability, like the natural ability of individuals. And I think being able to identify that in students, identify where, first of all, their initial talent and ability is, or what level they start at, and also identifying what level their progression is at. Because I think something that is often overlooked when people look at talent and kind of a natural ability, it's not just how good you are when you enter a sport, when you first start practicing a sport, but it's also how well you respond to training and how well you improve. You know, I think like take weightlifting, for example. Some people might walk into the gym and are just so ridiculously strong, so they can squat 150 kilograms on their first day, versus someone who squats maybe 70, 80 kilograms on their first day. But if they respond to training better than the person who lifts 150 in the long run over the next 3, 4, 5 years, the progression of the person who started as a weaker athlete, I think, is more substantial than someone who doesn't develop, you know, doesn't adapt as well. So I think that's something to identify, and it only comes with experience. When I first started out coaching, I kind of expected it to be quite easy. I think I was a bit conceited in like how I expected coaching to be. And I think it just comes with some experience, really. Like, there's so much to learn. But yeah, identifying, to go back to the question, so identifying where the student is when they start practicing and identifying the rate of their progression based on the challenges you give them is golden. Like, it's literally, that's what we're after. We're trying to find that so that we can then introduce challenges at the right dosage of difficulty for them to progress.
Yeah, that's cool. I find it really intriguing, actually, how, you know, some kids can come into their session and you can tell there's something there, you know, straight away.
Yeah.
There's a girl I teach at the moment, and it's like, she could be incredible, like, genuinely. She's super quiet, gets on with everything. She's like 12, 13. And I'm like, wow, like, this is something, like, I just really want to keep her in the class, you know. She's surrounded by boys and she's completely like mute almost, but she's like really good. And
we have a student just like that.
Yeah. And it's those sort of people that you can sort of think about it two ways, because I want to encourage and support people like her as much as possible, because they are talented and because they could be really good and they've got a large potential. But then I also, sometimes that puts the blinders on, in a way. Like, I forget about, I've got that kind of like talent bias, you know, like I see someone that excites me, I'm like, oh my God, like this it could be amazing. I think I'm just wary with myself with that sort of thing, because as you said, there's kids who, or, you know, sorry, I keep saying kids, but there's people who start and, you know, they might not stand out at all, but, you know, year after year, the grinders, you know, they come out, and you get people like Matt Moore and stuff, who, I mean, I think he's great. He's a great mover, and I've seen him in only a few snapshots of time but like his progression has been mad, and that's definitely down to his hard work, but also you guys, I assume, you know, identifying his talent and working with it and pushing him. I thought it was, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, so something that springs to mind when you say that as well. Obviously, I started my point by saying that progression is the most important thing in parkour. I think it should be for all individuals. That's how you sustain yourself. You sustain your interest in parkour. But that relies on an initial interest. You know, like I think we sometimes forget to recognise that a lot of kids who come into the classes aren't initially that interested at all. So sparking interest and sparking encouragement for progression is like one of the biggest things as well. You know, like I think we take it for granted because we've been training for so long, and it's parkour is such an integral part of what we do. We take for granted just the element of interest in doing it. You know, like parkour isn't for everyone. As coaches, it's our job to make it as accessible for people who may enjoy it. Yeah. So I think kids and students who walk into the door and maybe not even that interested, especially kids, because you know their parents send them on things that maybe they just want to get them moving, want to get them active. If you're an adult, you've taken a responsibility and you've you know chosen to do this as a thing, so it's maybe a bit different. But either way, I think developing or encouraging and finding interest is really important, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you should put a challenge in a kid's face when he first walks into the door. Not always, you know, ultimately to progress, you need to challenge yourself. But sometimes giving them a challenge turns them away from it, you know, so just like movement itself is enjoyable for a lot of people, not for everyone, but for a lot of people. So just getting them introduced to that and getting them used to the feeling of movement and maybe sparking some interest is a big part of it as well. So yeah, just another kind of point to mention. Can't really go without being mentioned. So
yeah, definitely. It's funny. I was just looking back on some of the videos I've already done. I've left this channel a bit vacant for a while. But kind of coming back to it, and I just rewatched some of the interview with Flynn. It's interesting how you actually asked him, you know, does he think that parkour is for everyone? And I've definitely I've definitely seen it in over the years. You know, these kids that have, I guess they think they have an understanding of what parkour is, and they have a huge expectation actually. And I guess, to be quite frank, I've not, as a coach, equaled that expectation, you know, because for me, I guess I'm more on the cautionary side. I know there's a lot of coaches who are a bit more laissez-faire, I guess, like with the way they teach and let the individual kind of do their own thing a bit more. I'm definitely more like I'm in charge. I'm going to tightly structure this session, and it does put people off, and it's a shame because I've had a few kids. I've seen a slight pattern in a few kids who maybe have some behavioural issues or other issues, and their raw talent is like massive, and I just haven't been able to adhere to that kind of personality, I guess. And I've had really sulky kids who are like jumping way further than the other kids who like doing all sorts, and they're just like, I'm bored, I don't want to do this anymore, and they've left. And it's just like, I feel weird with those individuals, because I have this kind of like savior idea of like, oh well, so and so they've got ADHD, or so and so has autism, or so and so has behavioral issues, and like, oh, I can be that coach that makes them into a champion, you know. And it's like doesn't always work like that. I think there's quite often I think you have to be adaptable as a person, a figurehead personality, but I think sometimes there's just it's difficult to gel and difficult to encourage certain personality types and different individuals, I guess. So I guess that's something that I've found. But yeah, I guess we're about halfway through now. So I'll go on to the question. which is really more about you, I guess. And we've talked about progression so far, and I totally agree in that progression is the carrot.
Yeah.
They're all chasing, you know. So what do you think about your own? You've been training what, 8 years, 9 years?
I think I said 10 at the start of this video, this interview, but I think it's 9. I think it's 9.
What is
like it's coming up? 2011 it was like summer, so it's coming up 9. Yeah, it's pretty much 9.
Because I just trying to remember what you got on your Instagram bio. You've got parkour since, yeah.
2011.
So you've been training a lot, and I know that you've had a few issues, you've had a few setbacks. You've had some big, I'd say some pretty big moments as well. Like, as in, I've seen some aspect, like for example, the stick in Leuven. That, I'd say that was like a big moment for you.
Yeah.
In a way, like, not because it went like viral, but as in, I think it just represented definitely a new competence in a very in downwards prees. Like,
yeah.
I think it exemplified that you are good at that. And I was just wanting to think. I wanted your thoughts on how you are, I guess, trying to chase that carrot, and how your methods maybe have changed over the years, and as you get older, and blah blah blah, all that.
So, yeah, I mean, you were there with that jump in Leuven. Yeah, I was. The thing is, like, that probably was. It probably is one of the jumps that I am most happy with that I've ever done. It's probably, you know, top 5 single movements I've done that I'm most happy with, which I think you know. But my reaction isn't shouting, screaming, excited, you know, cork boy style celebration after I do something like that. Yeah. Why is it always this? But I think, like, because even though I'm like really happy with that stick, I walked away like, yes, like, you know, I think I clapped and I was like very happy with it. But there's always a next thing. There's always like another, like, it could be even better. I could have made it even better. I don't think anything I've ever done is 100% perfect. So there's that, first of all. So I think something with progression that I've been thinking about a lot recently is approaching progression in parkour as investments rather than expenditure. So what I mean by that is, if you take, I know I've told you in the past I've been looking into economics quite a lot, and it's very new to me, but it's kind of almost like, what's the word? Like paradigm shifting in how I view the world, really. And I think I'm just I always try and apply new ideas that I've found to other aspects of life. Like, I think, you know, we all do. And I think, yeah, if you look at kind of economics, and if you look at the idea of investment, you know, the idea of investment is you invest something now, you sacrifice something now for to benefit the future. Yeah. And expenditure is spending money now with not any regard for the future. It's just expenditure. It costs you now, and it's not an investment for the future. And I think if we look at training, if you are training with like maximum effort, highest level of, you know, your ability all the time, then I just think it doesn't have much consideration for the future. Like, I think I'm trying to zoom out now, over the past year or so, trying to zoom out a little bit at looking at my training over the next 5-10 years. And like right now, where I am right now, it's 2020. In 2030, in 10 years' time, I want to be considerably better than I am now. So how do I achieve that? Is it by training at my maximum almost all the time now? No, I don't think it is. So I'm looking more at investing in the right amount now to get that long-term growth, and it being sustainable. Me and Flynn have talked about this quite a lot, and I think there's some people who are much more on the too conservative side of that. There's a few people I know who I feel like, if you look at the past 10 years of their training, they've only invested a very, very small amount. It's like putting a pound into a jar every once a month or something, versus taking that slight bit more risk. Because the more you invest, the more risk is involved in getting injured. Much like the more you invest in your money in something, the more risk there is that you are financially struggling because you've invested money. And I think, you can be too conservative and look at your past 10 years and you haven't made as much progress as you could have based on your ability at the time 10 years ago. And then you can do way too much and get injured and burn yourself out. And that takes a lot of people away from the sport. And in the long term, you've wasted more time because you've got injured so much over the next 10 years that the rate of progression has been just up and down. And you're probably better in 5 years than you are now. But could it have been better if you'd have invested the right amount at the right time for the long-term growth? So I think that's kind of what I'm after now. And I think getting injured is kind of like, if you get injured and you have a setback, that's kind of like being quite poor in a way. If we compare it to money again, it's like being poor. If you're quite poor, you don't have much to invest. So the amount of training that you're doing to build up that tolerance and build up that progression over time should be very minimal. You're trying to build up slowly over time and increase your wealth, increase your capital over time. And if you are a bit injured and even if you're 100% healthy, no niggles at all, no injuries at all, you shouldn't be training at 100%, because then it's like having £100,000 and investing 99,000 or even £100,000 into something you have nothing to fall back on. So it's just the idea. I think it works on a percentage probably. It's pretty hard to quantify in training because we get carried away and we go and spend 8 hours all day training. And I think something that I've thought about with Callum's tip recently, Callum's 500 tip, it's just like, as a sport, we call ourselves athletes and we don't train like any other athlete. Like, it's not, the training that we do is just so free flowing and like based on how we feel in the moment. Sure. No one else's training is like that in other sports. So I think if we were to structure our training a lot more, it's much easier to quantify and much easier to analyze how we've progressed over the years. That doesn't necessarily mean that we should, each training session, have a plan for sets and reps of things every single training session. I know some people have implemented that and it seems to be paying off. Talking of Darryl Stingley particularly, he seems to be quite keen on that stuff, which is brilliant. But I think that's my general approach now, summarised. I mean, it's taken a lot of years to develop that wisdom, and I'm sure I'll look back in 5 years and probably think, I thought I was so wise then, and I've learned a lot more now from probably having more injuries. We all get carried away. We all fall into that trap of coming back from an injury and getting too excited and doing too much training at the same level that we left off at. You really have to ease back into it and invest the right amount at the right time so that we can look at the long term, zoom out, look at the bigger picture. But with that being said, enjoyment and having fun is still at the core of parkour. Like you find the challenges that you want to find, you find them enjoyable because they appeal to you. And if a challenge means that you're going slightly out of that comfort zone every now and again and investing that bit too much of energy and effort into a challenge that maybe sacrifices the long run slightly, then maybe it's worth it on the odd occasion. It's like we've all just seen Hafthor Julius deadlift 501 kilograms, and Eddie Hall did it a few years back, lifting 500 kilograms, and that sort of lift isn't like, he's not doing that to get stronger for longevity. That's a sacrifice he's making for a ridiculous sacrifice that he's making for history, really. But obviously he's tapered and peaked up to that point and then he's dropping back off. It's not like that all the time. I think we can learn a lot from other sports, really. I think that's something that we should also consider, how much we can learn from other sports. So
I can't imagine being that strong and just like picking, because I have a certain amount of strength, and in my day-to-day life I come into contact with various things that are various weights. I can't imagine being at his level of strength and just like picking things up easily, like just
lift, like me or you deadlifting 200 kilograms would be a 3-4 year goal from now. If me or you were to ever, like, if we were to devote ourselves to powerlifting, you deadlifted 250, that would be a pretty like intermediate, pretty good level lift. You know, like 300 kilograms is where like people who weigh my weight are competing in powerlifting. 300 is ridiculous. It's 500. It's absurd.
Absurd. Yeah. Well, it's this. It's good you mentioned Callum's tip about the 500 tip, because I think I definitely, I know we've talked about this a lot anyway, but I definitely feel there are a few kind of new waves with the parkour culture at the moment that are coming about, and I think he's created one of them with that. I think that JimmyTheGiant, Kieran, is doing something as well. As always, Motus and Storro are doing stuff and keeping things going. But yeah, I feel like people are starting to reflect and think about their own training and think about the culture of parkour. I think, it's interesting. I think you're completely right about this idea of athleticism and training. I think that to an extent, it's been part of parkour culture has been a huge kind of celebration of freedom and not having to think about structure or the future, or it's no coincidence that a lot of parkour people have tramped around from here and there, live quite frugally, it's celebrated the moment, lived in the moment, that sort of thing, these big amazing moments of life, doing these incredible things that most people can't do. It's no surprise really, but I do find it super interesting what you're saying and about this rise of the athlete, and again, I think it definitely involves this kind of different focus that people are having towards things like competition. I know a lot of the Americans are really pushing like performance, like some of Darryl Stingley's stuff. You can see he puts in crazy amounts of work, and he's
absolutely.
I watch his videos, and I see him as like a different beast, like he's a different. It's parkour, but it's like, I guess it is athletic parkour. It's not. There's no scrappiness. There's no snoppiness. It's powerful and clean as hell. Like it's refined. Yeah. I think it's subjective whether you see that as the pinnacle of parkour, though. You take someone like Matthias or Yannis, and I would say I prefer watching them. I prefer seeing their content. I guess that comes down to style, but it's interesting. Are they athletes? Are they just extremely lucky genetically and very hardworking? It's interesting these different subsects of parkour and how people fall into these different subsects. I guess it's based on what you want to achieve. Like Matthias, I don't think wants to achieve the same things that Darryl does.
No.
He's, and again, that comes down to what he's good at and what he enjoys and stuff. But I find it so interesting that we're in a position now where the community is big enough and there's enough subsects where we've got a range. There's a range of pinnacles in a way. There's the athletes like Tim and Darryl, and there's the street cats like Matthias and Yannis and Joe Scandrett and that, and then you've got the ruggedness and the sort of renegadeness of Storro, and it's just amazing. It's amazing that you can pick from these different areas. I'm kind of going off track a little bit. We've not got too long left, I don't think, but one thing that I've looked at a little bit with my own training is very, very basic, but writing down 3 lists And the first list is things that I'm good at and don't necessarily need to improve on. Well, you can always improve, but just things that I want to maintain. So I know that I'm good at step bolts. Like, there's no way, something quite drastic would have to happen for me to be like really struggling with step bolts. Like, I'm good at step bolts. I'm good at rolls, and I can do a nice sit dash, that sort of thing. And then the second list I've got is things that I can do, but definitely need more work. So, for example, I'm not massively confident with like lache pries or level cat passes or level arm jumps, cat leaps, that sort of thing. So that would be in my category, category. And then the last list for me would be things that I actually can't do, things that I maybe have tried but don't like have down, And so for me, that would be like I can't lache from cast. I can't do it. I can't do I don't know, front 540. I can't do it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you on that one. I can't do
it. I've just I've made these 3 lists, and I'm kind of, I guess maybe what I'm looking at now is just picking from a few of those things to my sessions, because I don't think that I'll ever want to do my parkour sessions as just like workouts, really, like to a strict extreme. But I definitely think that I want to be a bit more set with my intention, I guess.
Yeah. So I think like the beauty of parkour and it being a sport that other than for competition, if you're competing, then you've got set abilities that you should work on. But I think that generally, like I've just heard Callum speak about this in the recent Motus podcast.
Yeah.
And he's saying why do you think that you've kind of just gravitated towards the more power oriented stuff? And it's ultimately just because that's what appeals to you. Like, that's what you enjoy doing. And I think, like, if I were to write the same list, I can't front 540, I can't do a castaway, I can't do I don't know, I'm not very good at big plyo dive kongs. Like, I don't really like level dive kongs or dive kongs in general. But the beauty of parkour is you can choose to specialize in the things that you want to pursue, and you can choose to not engage in practicing the things that you're not as good at if you choose to. Like, it is completely up to you. That being said, if you only do precisions, then your overall level isn't going to be that good, and you're going to kind of, I think, hit a plateau at some point. And to keep it interesting, you need a good kind of range of things to be working on. So I think, like, I go in and out of phases of being interested in working on the weaknesses of things that I've neglected over the years, and then focusing on more specialising on, kind of specialising in the things that I am good at, and improving it, because I get a lot of enjoyment out of practicing the things I'm good at. And I think, like, that's still very important to me. Like, I wouldn't want to significantly limit the amount of training that goes into practicing the things that I am really good at. Like, I wouldn't want it to just be like, I should only really work on my weaknesses. I should only just maintain my good attributes and just work on my weaknesses and keep everything coming up together. It doesn't have to be like that. You can choose how you want that to be, how you want your different attributes to be staggered, if you were to make a graph. So I think it's completely optional. And obviously Matthias and Yannis have chosen much different attributes to work on, different elements of the practice of the movement. And it is almost a different world. Like, you look at someone like Darryl Stingley. I've butchered that. I think it's Stingley. Darryl. I am Wavezilla.
Dazza.
Easy. Get him in the ring. But he's me and Sam have talked about just athletes fighting, and we've said Darryl would be a very good contender because he just looks like a beast. But yeah, it's almost a different world. Callum and Darryl versus Matthias, Mark Ashigaru, I don't know, much more creative people, like creative, flowy type movements. It is almost a different world. But it's part of the same sport or part of the same community. We would love to practice together. But it's just approach is different. And, it is really just each their own. Like, you're not going to find Giannis spending the majority of his year working on plyos and drop precision sticks. That's just not what he's that interested in, seemingly. But Callum is all about that. And I absolutely love watching both of them. Like, even though my style is probably closer to that of Callum, in terms of what I find interesting about parkour, the challenges that I'm attracted to, I enjoy watching Matthias just as much, like, really. So, yeah.
Cool. Okay, well, I think we've gone over 40 minutes and nothing's happened, so that's
still recording.
Interesting. It's still recording, yeah.
Mm.
So hopefully we don't get cut off. But yeah, I guess we'll wrap it up there. What are your I guess briefly, what are your kind of intentions for yourself as a practitioner and what you want to achieve, really? Quite a big question to close off on, but
I suppose it's just maintaining that idea of, in 10 years' time, I want to be better than I am now. And the more steady the progression, the better I'm going to be in 10 years. So it's just about managing that and not getting carried away and doing too much, but also not being so conservative that I can't enjoy myself and I can't push myself. So just finding that balance. As an athlete, I don't really intend to learn to front 540 or to... I actually would like to learn to castaway. I think that looks kind of cool. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm also open to, like, maybe in 5-10 years, I'm not as keen on, like, I'm not as fixated on the idea of progression. Maybe I'm enjoying just moving more. Like, maybe I will move more like Matthias than I definitely won't move a lot like Matthias because he's just like one of the best movers in the world, I think. But yeah, like, and like Shade's that as well. I can't say best movers in the world without mentioning Shade. He's one of my favourites. But yeah, like, who knows what my interest will be in 5-10 years. Right now, I know what I'm after as an athlete and in the sport I'm aiming to achieve. That doesn't mean a checklist of jumps I want to do. It just means an idea of where I want to be as in my level and my ability, in time. So yeah, it's just about maximising that, really, but not getting too carried away and being too structured and not having any fun at all, because it's quite easy to get sucked into that, for me anyway. So yeah.
Cool. Okay, well, we'll call it there. Thank you very much for all your thoughts, Jack.
Thank you.
I'm sure, well, we talk all the time, but I'm sure we'll do this again sometime. It'd be good, and hopefully we can get I can contact some more people, see what we can learn, really. So thank you very much. We'll call it there. Yeah, stay safe, guys. Keep training. If you want to get in touch with Jack, it's at Jack HB.
Yeah, or Jack_HB.
Sorry,
underscore. Yeah. Instagram, and then just my name on YouTube, Jack Holland-Bartlett. Trying to focus a bit more on making some videos on that whilst we're in these strange times. So yeah,
keep your eyes open. All right, cheers, Jack. I'll see you later. Thank you very much, guys. See you on the next one.
Take care.